Park J stood near the observation window and watched the stars. 11 months. He had been on this ship for 11 months, and still most of the crew looked through him like he was made of glass. The Valari were a proud species. They had silver-white skin that seemed to glow softly in dim light. Their eyes held colors that shifted like oil on water, and when they spoke, their voices carried the weight of thousands of years of civilization. Humans to them were new. Humans were primitive. Humans were tolerated. Jay did not mind. He had learned patience long ago, back on Earth, during the dark years when patience was the only thing that kept him alive. He was a cultural liaison now. That was the official title. In truth, he was an observer, a guest who was allowed to watch, but rarely invited to participate. The flagship was called the Eternal Dawn. It was the largest ship in the Valari Empire, home to the royal family and thousands of crew members. Jay had a small room on the lower decks. He ate alone most days. He walked the corridors and studied the Valari, learning their customs, their gestures, the small movements that meant respect or insult. He was good at watching. He had always been good at watching. The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. Jay did not need to turn around to know who it was. Only one person on this ship ever came looking for him. "There you are," said Princess Nari. Her voice was warm, curious, full of life. She walked to stand beside him, her silver robes flowing like water. She was young by Valari standards, barely 200 years old. By human standards, she looked like a woman in her early 20s. And her eyes were the color of pale moonlight, and they always seemed to be asking questions. "Your Highness," Jay said with a small bow. "I told you not to call me that when we are alone," she said. There was no anger in her voice, only amusement. "Just Nari is fine." "Nari," he repeated. It still felt strange on his tongue. She smiled and looked out at the stars with him. "What are you thinking about?" "Home," he admitted. "I was thinking about Earth." "Tell me about it again," she said. She always asked this. She never seemed to grow tired of his stories. So he told her. He told her about the blue oceans and the green forests. He told her about cities that never slept and villages where time moved slowly. He told her about rain, real rain that fell from clouds and made everything smell fresh and new. The Valari homeworld had no rain. Water came from underground rivers and was carefully rationed. The idea of water falling freely from the sky amazed her every time. "It sounds chaotic," she said. "It is," Jay agreed. "But it is also beautiful. Chaos can be beautiful." She tilted her head, studying him with those strange, shifting eyes. "You humans confuse me. You live such short lives. 80 years, maybe 100 if you're lucky. And yet you do not seem sad about it. You do not seem afraid." Jay thought about this for a moment. "We are afraid," he said honestly, "but we do not let fear stop us. If we only have 100 years, then we must make each year count. We cannot waste time being afraid of the end." "That is either very wise or very foolish," Nari said. "Probably both," Jay replied. She laughed at that. Her laugh was like bells, bright and clear. It made him smile. They talked for another hour. She asked him about human customs, about the strange things his species did. Why did humans shake hands when they met? He explained that it came from ancient times, a way to show that you carried no weapon, that you came in peace. She found this fascinating. To the Valari, trust was built through words and formal agreements. The idea of showing trust through touch was strange to her. Strange, but wonderful. "I wish others could see what I see," she said quietly as their conversation wound down. "When I tell the court about humans, they laugh. They think you are simple creatures. They do not understand." "Give them time," Jay said. "Understanding takes time." She nodded slowly. "You are very patient, Park Jay." "I have to be," he said simply. Later that night, Jay walked back to his quarters through the long, silver corridors of the ship. The walls hummed softly with the sound of engines. Crew members passed him without a glance. He was used to it. But tonight, something felt different. He could not explain it. There was a tension in the air, a feeling like the moment before a storm. He had learned to trust his instincts during his years as a combat medic. When something felt wrong, it usually was. He paused near the royal chambers. The guards stood at their posts, still and silent. But in the shadows beyond them, he thought he saw movement, A flicker of something. Someone who should not be there. He watched for a long moment. Nothing happened. The shadows were still. Jay shook his head. He was tired. His mind was playing tricks on him. He continued to his room and tried to sleep, but sleep did not come easily that night. The next morning, an announcement echoed through the ship. The princess would attend the Unity Gala in 3 days. It was the largest diplomatic gathering in a decade. Representatives from dozens of species would be there. Security would be at its highest level. Jay listened to the announcement in his small room. He thought about the shadows near the royal chambers. He thought about the feeling that had kept him awake. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he was being paranoid. But deep in his gut, the feeling remained. Something was coming. Something bad. In Park J, the human that nobody noticed, the outsider among stars, could not shake the sense that everything was about to change. He went about his day as usual. He ate alone. He walked the corridors. He watched and learned. But his eyes kept drifting toward the princess, toward the guards, toward the shadows. 3 days until the gala. 3 days until the moment that would change his life forever. He just did not know it yet. The grand atrium was the most beautiful place Park J had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the stars themselves. The walls were made of glass, and through them the endless darkness of space glowed with distant suns. Thousands of beings filled the room. Valari nobles in their flowing silver robes. Diplomats from worlds Jay had never heard of. Creatures of every shape and size, all gathered for one night of peace and celebration. The Unity Gala happened once every 10 years. It was a time when old enemies set aside their hatred and spoke as equals. Wars had been ended in this room. Alliances had been born. History was made here, again and again. Jay stood near the edge of the crowd. He wore simple black clothes, the uniform of a cultural liaison. He did not belong among the nobles and diplomats. He was here only because protocol allowed it. A representative of Earth, even a small one, had the right to attend. He watched Princess Nari move through the crowd. She wore a gown of deep blue that sparkled with tiny lights, like she had wrapped herself in the night sky. She smiled and laughed and charmed everyone she met. Diplomats, who had seemed cold and distant, softened in her presence. She had a gift for making people feel important, feel seen. Jay smiled to himself. She was good at her job. Better than she knew. The queen sat on a raised platform at the far end of the room. Queen Sumi was ancient even by Valari standards. She had ruled for over 1,000 years. Her face was calm and unreadable, her eyes seeing everything and revealing nothing. She acknowledged guests with small nods but rarely spoke. She did not need to. Her presence alone was enough. Jay had spoken to the queen only twice in 11 months. Both times had been formal, brief, meaningless. To her, he was just another alien face in a crowd of alien faces. He accepted this. He expected nothing more. The night moved forward. Music played. Speeches were given. Jay stayed in his corner and watched. His earlier unease had faded but not disappeared. He could not stop scanning the room, looking for something out of place. Then he saw it. A server moved through the crowd carrying a tray of drinks. Nothing unusual about that. Servers were everywhere. But this one moved differently. His steps were too precise, too controlled. He walked like a soldier pretending to be a civilian. Jay straightened. His eyes followed the server as the man approached the center of the room. Approached the princess. The server's hand moved beneath the tray. A glint of metal. A shape that did not belong. Jay did not think. There was no time to think. His body moved before his mind could catch up. He pushed through the crowd, shoving aside nobles and diplomats. People shouted at him. He did not hear them. The server raised his hand. A small plasma pistol, hidden until this moment, aimed directly at Princess Nari's heart. Time slowed down. Jay saw Nari turn. Her eyes widened. She saw the weapon but could not move. Fear froze her in place. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. Jay threw himself forward. The bolt fired. A bright blue flash that burned the air. It should have hit Nari. It should have killed her instantly. But Jay was there. He put his body between her and death. The plasma bolt hit him in the chest. Pain exploded through him. Pain like nothing he had ever felt. It burned and froze at the same time. It tore through muscle and bone. He felt himself falling, the world spinning around him in a blur of light and screaming voices. He hit the floor. The crystal tiles were cold against his face. He could see blood spreading beneath him. Red blood. Human blood. So different from the silver blood of the Valari. Somewhere far away, he heard Nari scream his name. The assassin tried to fire again, but Captain Tejo was faster. The head of the royal guard appeared from nowhere, his blade flashing in the light. The assassin fell, dead before he touched the ground. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward. Nobles fled in terror. Voices shouted orders and questions and cries of fear. But Jay heard none of it. His world had become very small. Just the cold floor beneath him. Just the pain in his chest. Just the darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. Nari was beside him. He did not know when she had knelt down. Her hands pressed against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Silver tears ran down her silver cheeks. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please, Jay, stay with me." He tried to speak. He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to tell her not to cry, but his mouth would not work. His lungs would not fill with air. He looked up at her face. Her eyes were like moons, pale and bright and beautiful. That was his last thought before the darkness took him. Her eyes looked like twin moons. Then there was nothing. The queen descended from her platform. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. She walked to where Jay lay bleeding on the crystal floor. Her face showed no emotion. Her eyes revealed nothing. She looked at the dying human, the small, fragile creature who had thrown himself in front of a plasma bolt without hesitation, who had taken a shot meant for her daughter, who now lay in a pool of his own red blood, his heart struggling to beat, his body broken beyond repair. Something changed in her ancient eyes. Something shifted deep within her. "Get him to the medical bay," she said. Her voice was quiet but carried through the silent room. Now, guards rushed to obey. They lifted Jay carefully, mindful of his wounds. Nari followed them, refusing to let go of his hand. The queen watched them go. Then she turned to Captain Tejo. "Find out who sent the assassin," she said. "Find out who wanted my daughter dead, and find out why this human did what he did." Tejo bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty." The gala was over. The celebration had become a nightmare. But as servants cleaned the blood from the crystal floor, one question hung in the air like smoke. Would the human survive? No one believed he would. The wound was too severe. Human bodies were too weak. By morning, they expected him to be dead. But Park Jae had survived worse. And somewhere in the darkness, in the space between life and death, he was fighting. Fighting to breathe, fighting to live, fighting to see those moonlight eyes one more time. The Royal Medical Bay was the finest in the galaxy. It had machines that could heal wounds in seconds. It had medicines that could cure diseases humans had never even discovered. The doctors here had saved countless lives. They had brought people back from the edge of death more times than anyone could count. But tonight, they stood helpless. Dr. Yuna was the chief royal physician. She had served the crown for 300 years. She had healed warriors and nobles, princes and generals. She had never lost a patient she truly tried to save. Tonight, she was going to lose one. "His organs are failing," she reported to the gathered officials. Her voice was calm, professional, but her hands shook slightly. "The plasma bolt damaged his heart, his lungs, his liver. Our medicines do not work on human biology. His blood does not respond to our treatments. His cells reject our healing technology." Advisor Mirai stood near the back of the room. She was a tall, thin woman with cold eyes and a colder heart. She had served as the Queen's political counselor for 2 centuries, and she had never liked the human alliance. "Then let him die with honor," Mirai said. "He saved the princess. That is a noble death. We should not waste resources on a creature we cannot save." Princess Nari turned to face her. The young princess had not left Jay's side since they brought him here. Her gown was stained with his blood. Her eyes were red from crying. "He is not a creature," Nari said. Her voice was sharp, angry. "He is a man. He has a name. And he saved my life." "No one disputes his bravery," Mirai replied smoothly. "But we must be practical. Human bodies are weak. He will die no matter what we do. It is a kindness to let him go peacefully." The doors opened before Nari could respond. Queen Sumi entered the room and everyone fell silent. She moved slowly, her silver robes trailing behind her like water. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes swept across the room, seeing everything. She stopped beside Jay's bed. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. He lay still and pale, machines working to keep him alive. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. His heartbeat was weak, unsteady. He looked small, fragile, broken. "What do you need to save him?" the Queen asked. Dr. Yuna hesitated. "Your Majesty, I do not know if we can. Human biology is too different from ours. We have no records, no research, no understanding of how their bodies work." "Then learn," the Queen said simply. Mirai stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot mean to waste the Empire's resources on one human? The cost would be enormous. We would need to bring in specialists, conduct research, develop new treatments, all for a being who will likely die anyway." Queen Sumi turned to face her advisor. Something flickered in her ancient eyes, something that made Mirai step back. "He did not calculate the worth of my daughter's life before he moved," the Queen said. Her voice was soft, but filled the room like thunder. "He did not stop to think about the cost. He simply acted. He threw himself in front of death without hesitation." She looked back at Jay's still form. "I will not calculate the worth of his life. Every resource of this empire will be used to save him. Every doctor, every scientist, every piece of technology we possess. If there is a way to keep this human alive, we will find it." Mirai's face tightened. "Your Majesty, the Council will object. The nobles will question your judgment. To spend so much on a single human—" "Let them question," the Queen interrupted. "Let them object. I am the Queen. My word is law, and my law says this human will live." She turned to Dr. Yuna. "Do whatever you must. Contact Earth if necessary. Bring in their doctors, their scientists. I do not care how it is done, only that it is done." Dr. Yuna bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen left as silently as she had arrived. The room remained quiet for a long moment after she was gone. No one quite believed what had just happened. The Queen of the Valari Empire had just ordered them to save a single human life at any cost. Mirai was the first to speak. "This is madness," she muttered, but she said it quietly so no one else would hear. Then she turned and left the room, her cold eyes burning with hidden thoughts. The hours that followed were chaos. Messages were sent to Earth. Human doctors joined the effort through video communication, guiding the Valari physicians through procedures they had never performed. New medicines were created, tested, adjusted. Machines were modified to work with human biology. Nari stayed by Jay's side through all of it. She held his hand and spoke to him softly, telling him stories about her childhood, about the gardens on her homeworld, about anything she could think of. She did not know if he could hear her. She did not care. She needed to believe he was still there, somewhere in the darkness, fighting to come back. Late that night, when the medical bay was quiet and most of the staff had gone to rest, the Queen returned. She moved silently to Jay's bedside and looked down at him. His fever was high. His body was fighting a battle it should not have been able to fight. By all logic, he should have died hours ago. But his heart kept beating, weak, struggling, but still beating. The Queen touched his forehead gently. His skin was hot under her fingers. "Curious creature," she murmured. "What are you made of? Why do you refuse to give up?" He did not answer. He could not answer. But somewhere deep inside him, his cells were doing something impossible. They were healing. Slowly, clumsily, but healing. Dr. Yuna found her later that night, staring at her instruments in disbelief. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to see this." The Queen looked at the readings. They showed Jay's cellular activity, and what they showed made no sense. "His cells are regenerating," Yuna explained. "Not like ours, not clean or fast, but they are repairing the damage. His body is fighting back against wounds that should have killed him instantly." The Queen studied the readings for a long moment. "Humans evolved on a death world," she said quietly. "I have read the reports. Their planet is covered in predators, diseases, natural disasters. They should have died out long ago, but they did not. They survived. They adapted. She looked at Jay's pale face. Perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps they are harder to kill than we believed. For the first time in many years, Queen Sumi allowed herself to feel something like hope. The human was fighting, and against all odds, he was winning. Jay drifted in darkness. He was not awake, but he was not truly asleep either. He floated in a space between life and death, where time had no meaning and memory was the only companion. He saw his mother's face. She was smiling, the way she used to smile when he was young. They were standing in their small apartment in Busan, sunlight streaming through the windows. She was cooking something, and the smell filled the room with warmth. "You have to be strong," she told him, but her lips did not move. The words came from somewhere else, from the past, from a moment he had tried to forget. "When I am gone, you have to be strong." She had been sick for a long time. The war had taken everything from them, their home, their savings, their hope. When she died, Jay was 17 years old and completely alone. The memory shifted. Now he was in a field hospital years later. Bombs exploded in the distance. Wounded soldiers lay on stretchers around him, crying out in pain. He moved between them with bloody hands, stitching wounds, stopping bleeding, doing everything he could to keep them alive. "You cannot save them all," someone said. It might have been another medic. It might have been his own voice. "I can try," he answered. And he did try. He worked for days without sleep. He saved lives that should have been lost. He watched men die in his arms and still got up to save the next one, because that was who he was. That was all he knew how to be. The memories kept coming, years of his life playing out in the darkness. His first day on the Valari ship, the loneliness he felt when no one would speak to him. The first time Nari smiled at him and asked him about Earth. Nari. Her face appeared in the darkness, her moonlight eyes looking at him with worry, her voice calling his name over and over. "Stay with me. Please, Jay, stay with me." He wanted to reach for her. He wanted to tell her he was trying, but the darkness was heavy, and he was so tired. "You cannot give up," a voice said. It was his mother again, or maybe it was Nari, or maybe it was himself. "You never give up. That is not who you are." In the real world, in the medical bay of the eternal dawn, Jay's body continued to fight. Dr. Yuna studied her instruments with growing amazement. She had been a doctor for 3 centuries. She had never seen anything like this. "His immune system is remarkable," she told Captain Tejo, who had come to check on the human. "When I first treated him, his cells were dying faster than they could regenerate. But now they have adapted. His body is learning to heal itself." Tejo looked at the unconscious human. He had never paid much attention to Jay before. The man was quiet, invisible, easy to overlook. Now Tejo saw him differently. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Human evolution," Yuna replied. "Their planet is brutal. Their ancestors faced constant threats. Predators, diseases, extreme weather, even each other. Only the strongest survived. Over millions of years, they developed remarkable resilience." She pulled up a holographic display showing Jay's cellular structure. "Look at this. His cells produce special proteins that help repair damaged tissue. His blood carries substances that fight infection more aggressively than anything I have seen. His brain releases chemicals that block pain and increase endurance. In times of crisis, his entire body works together to survive." Tejo was silent for a moment. "We call them fragile," he said finally. "We say they are weak because they live short lives and their bodies break easily." "They are not weak," Yuna said. "They are different. They were built to endure, to recover, to keep going when any other species would have died. They are persistence predators. They do not give up. They cannot give up. It is in their very biology." Meanwhile, the Queen Sumi received a report in her private chambers. Captain Tejo had completed his investigation. The assassin was linked to a political faction that opposed closer ties with Earth. They wanted to blame humans for the attack. They wanted to break the alliance and isolate Earth from the galactic community. The leader of this faction was advisor Mirai. The Queen read the report carefully. Mirai had served her for 2 centuries. She had trusted the advisor with secrets of the Empire. And all this time, Mirai had been working against her. "Summon her," the queen commanded. Mireille came without suspicion. She bowed respectfully and waited for the queen to speak. "You tried to kill my daughter," the queen said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. Mireille's face changed. For just a moment, fear flickered across her features. Then it was gone, replaced by defiance. "I tried to protect the Empire," she said. "Humans are dangerous. They breed fast. They adapt to anything. They spread across their own world like a plague. If we let them into the galaxy, they will eventually dominate it. The assassination was meant to save us from that future. By murdering my child? By blaming the humans and cutting all ties with them." Mireille shook her head. "But the human ruined everything. He was supposed to be too slow, too weak to react. Instead, he moved faster than anyone expected. He took the shot himself." The queen rose from her throne. She walked toward Mireille slowly, each step heavy with ancient power. "You underestimated them," she said. "Just as I did. Just as we all did." She stopped directly in front of her former advisor. "Humans are not a plague. They are something else entirely. Something we should respect, not fear." Mireille was taken away by guards. She would face justice for her crimes. But her words stayed in the queen's mind. Humans adapt to anything. They spread and survive and never stop. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps it was dangerous. Or perhaps it was exactly what the galaxy needed. In the medical bay, Princess Nari had fallen asleep in her chair. She still held Jay's hand. Even in sleep, she would not let go. Jay floated in his darkness, but it was not as dark as before. He could see light now, somewhere far above him. He could hear Nari's breathing, soft and steady. He could feel her fingers wrapped around his. He was tired, so tired. Every part of him wanted to rest, to stop fighting, to finally be at peace. But her hand was warm. Her voice echoed in his mind. "Stay with me." So he kept fighting. He pushed toward the light, one heartbeat at a time. And then, after 3 days of unconsciousness, Park Jae opened his eyes. The medical bay was dim. Machines beeped quietly around him. Everything hurt, a deep ache that reached into his bones. But he was alive. He turned his head slowly. Nari was asleep beside him, her silver hair falling across her face. She looked exhausted. She looked beautiful. "Nari," he whispered. His voice was barely a sound. Her eyes opened. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then the tears came, running down her cheeks like silver rivers. "You came back," she said, her voice breaking. "You came back to me." He tried to smile. It hurt, but he did it anyway. "I promised," he whispered. "Humans do not break promises." She laughed through her tears and held his hand tighter. Outside the medical bay, word spread quickly through the ship. The human had survived. Against all odds, against all logic, Park Jae had refused to die, and nothing would ever be the same again. Recovery was slow. Every day brought new pain, new challenges, new moments when Jae wondered if he would ever feel whole again. The plasma bolt had torn through his chest. It had damaged organs that human doctors said should have killed him. And yet, piece by piece, his body put itself back together. Dr. Yuna visited him often. She had become fascinated by human biology. She ran tests, took samples, asked endless questions. Jay answered as best he could. He did not mind. He understood her curiosity. "Your body is remarkable," she told him one morning. "The wound is healing faster than I predicted. Your cells are regenerating at twice the rate I expected. By all logic, you should have died. Instead, you are getting stronger." Jay looked down at his bandaged chest. "I had good reasons to live." Yuna smiled slightly. It was the first time he had seen her smile. "Yes, I noticed. The princess has barely left your side." Word of his survival spread quickly through the ship. The human who took a plasma bolt and refused to die. Crew members who had ignored him for months now looked at him with new eyes. Some with curiosity, some with respect, some with fear. Jay did not care about their opinions. He only cared about getting strong enough to walk again. Princess Nari helped him every step of the way. She brought him food from the royal kitchens. She read to him when he was too tired to speak. She told him stories about her childhood, about the gardens on her homeworld, about the first time she saw the stars from a spaceship. "I was terrified," she admitted. The universe seemed so big, so empty. I felt like nothing. You are not nothing, Jay said. You are the opposite of nothing. She looked at him with those moonlight eyes. Something passed between them, something neither of them put into words. But they both felt it, a connection that went deeper than friendship, deeper than gratitude. 2 weeks after the shooting, Jay took his first steps. His legs shook beneath him. Pain shot through his chest with every movement. But he walked. 5 steps, then 10, then across the room. Nari watched him with tears in her eyes. You are stubborn, she said. Very stubborn, he agreed. It is a human thing. The Queen came to visit him that day. It was the first time she had come since giving the order to save his life. She entered the recovery room quietly, dismissing the guards with a gesture. Jay tried to bow, but she stopped him with a raised hand. Do not strain yourself, she said. You have done enough. She sat in the chair beside his bed. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Her ancient eyes studied his face, searching for something. I have ruled this empire for over 1,000 years, she said finally. I have seen wars and peace. I have watched species rise and fall. I thought I understood the universe. She paused. I did not understand humans. Jay remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Your species lives such short lives. 80 years. 100 if you are lucky. To us, that is nothing. A blink of an eye. We thought this made you weak. We thought you were fragile creatures, barely worth noticing. Her eyes met his. We were wrong. Your Majesty, Jay began, but she raised her hand again. In 1,000 years, I have never seen anyone move as fast as you did. Not our finest warriors, not our greatest soldiers. You saw danger and you acted, without thought, without hesitation, without any concern for your own life. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me why. I need to understand. Jay thought about the question. He thought about that moment in the gala, when time had slowed and he had seen the assassin's weapon aimed at Nari's heart. He had not thought about being a hero. He had not calculated the odds of survival. He had simply moved. I do not know how to explain it, he said honestly. Humans are like that. When we see someone in danger, something inside us takes over. We act before we think. It is instinct. It is in our blood. Even if it means death. Even then, Jay smiled slightly. We are not brave because we do not fear death. We are brave because we fear losing the people we care about more than we fear dying. The Queen was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. My daughter cares about you. I see it in her eyes. I see it in the way she has stayed by your side through all of this. Jay felt his heart beat faster. She is a good person, the best person I have ever met. Yes, she is. The Queen studied him carefully. And you would die for her again, would you not? Without hesitation. Yes, Jay said simply. There was no point in lying. It was the truth. The Queen nodded slowly. Something in her expression changed. She looked at him not as a curiosity or a guest, but as something else, something more. Rest now, she said, rising from her chair. Regain your strength. We have much to discuss when you are well. She left as quietly as she had arrived. Jay lay back against his pillows, his mind spinning with questions. That afternoon, Captain Tejo came to see him. The head of the Royal Guard had been distant toward Jay since his arrival. Not hostile, but not friendly either. Now Tejo stood at the foot of Jay's bed and looked at him with respect. I owe you an apology, Tejo said stiffly. I thought humans were weak. I thought you were beneath notice. I was wrong. Jay shook his head. You do not owe me anything. I do. Tejo straightened his shoulders. You have the heart of a Valari. That is the highest compliment I can give. Then I accept it with thanks, Jay replied. It means more than you know. Tejo nodded once sharply. Then he placed his fist over his heart in the traditional warrior salute. When you are healed, come find me. If you are going to stay in this empire, you should know how to defend yourself. He left before Jay could respond. That night, Nari sat with him as the stars passed by the window. She had brought tea from her personal collection, a blend from her homeworld that tasted like honey and flowers. The court is talking about you, she said. Everyone is talking about you, the human who would not die. Some people call you a miracle. Some call you a monster. Some do not know what to call you. What do you call me? Jay asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at him with those pale, beautiful eyes. I call you mine, she said softly, if you will let me. Jay reached out and took her hand. His chest ached. His body was still weak, but his heart felt stronger than it had ever been. I will let you, he said, for as long as you want me. She smiled, and in that moment, the entire universe seemed to glow a little brighter. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance, and somewhere in the depths of the ship, the Queen made plans for the future. The human had proven himself. Now it was time to show the galaxy what that meant. 3 months had passed since the assassination attempt. Jay grew stronger every day. His wounds had healed, leaving only scars across his chest, scars that told a story of sacrifice and survival. He wore them with quiet pride. The Queen summoned him to her private chambers on a cold morning. The royal quarters were high in the ship, with windows that looked out on the endless stars. She sat in a simple chair, without her crown or formal robes. She looked almost ordinary. Almost. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. We have much to discuss. Jay sat. He waited. Advisor Mirai has been tried for her crimes, the Queen began. She was found guilty of treason and attempted murder. She will spend the rest of her days in prison, far from here. Good, Jay said. He felt no joy in her punishment, but he felt no sadness either. She had tried to kill Nari. She had failed. That was all that mattered. Before they took her away, she said something to me. The Queen's eyes grew distant. She warned me about humans. She said your species is dangerous, that you adapt to anything, that you survive everything, that one day you will spread across the galaxy and outlast us all. Jay remained silent. She was trying to frighten me, the Queen continued, but she failed. Because I looked at you, Park Jay. I looked at what you did, and I saw something different from what she saw. She leaned forward. I saw a man who threw himself in front of death to save a stranger. I saw a man who fought back from wounds that should have killed him. I saw courage and stubbornness and a refusal to give up, no matter the cost. Her ancient eyes met his. That is not dangerous. That is admirable. And I want to honor it. She rose from her chair and walked to a cabinet on the far wall. From it, she removed a small box made of crystal. The title of kin, she said, opening the box to reveal a silver medallion. It is the highest honor a non-Valari can receive. It makes you a protected member of the royal household. You will have rights and privileges equal to any noble of our empire. Jay stared at the medallion. Your Majesty, I do not deserve. You do, she interrupted. You proved your worth with blood. Accept this gift. It is the least I can offer. Jay took the medallion with trembling hands. It was heavier than he expected. The metal was warm against his skin. Thank you, he said quietly. I will try to be worthy of it. The Queen smiled. It was the first time he had ever seen her truly smile. But not everyone in the Empire was happy with this decision. Mirai's supporters had not disappeared when she went to prison. They hid in shadows, whispered in corners, plotted in secret. They hated the humans. They hated the Alliance. And they especially hated Park Jay, the human who had ruined everything. 1 week after Jay received the title of kin, he fell suddenly ill. It started with dizziness. Then came the pain in his stomach, sharp and burning. He collapsed in his quarters, unable to stand. By the time the guards found him, he was barely conscious. Dr. Yuna ran every test she could think of. The results came back quickly. Poison, she announced, her voice tight with anger. A compound designed to attack the nervous system. It was hidden in his food. Nari went pale. Will he survive? If he were Velari, no. The poison would have killed him within minutes. Yuna shook her head slowly. But his human liver is filtering the toxin faster than it can spread. His body is fighting it off, just as it fought off the plasma wound. Captain Taiho clenched his fists. Who did this? Someone in the kitchen. Someone with access to his meals. Yuna looked at the monitors showing Jay's vital signs. Find them before they try again. Taiho's investigation was swift and brutal. Within hours, he had caught the poisoner, a young servant who believed Mirai's teachings about human danger. He confessed without much resistance. You cannot stop us, the servant said as guards dragged him away. The human is a disease. One day everyone will see it. Jay recovered within 2 days. When he woke, Nari was beside him again, just as she had been months ago after the shooting. Her eyes were red from crying. This cannot continue, she said. These people keep trying to kill you. Every time you survive, they try again. You should go back to Earth, where you will be safe. Jay sat up slowly. His body still ached from the poison, but he forced himself to move. No, he said firmly. Jay, I do not run. He took her hand and held it tight. Not from anything. Not from anyone. I survived a plasma bolt. I survived poison. I will survive whatever comes next. Why? Tears streamed down her face. Why are you so stubborn? Why do you refuse to protect yourself? He reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. Because I have something worth fighting for, he said simply. I have you, and I will not leave you. Not now, not ever. She broke down then, sobbing against his chest while he held her. He stroked her silver hair and whispered words of comfort. He did not feel brave. He felt tired and scared and uncertain. But he had spoken the truth. He would not run. Later that day, he went to find Captain Tejo. The warrior was training in the combat hall, moving through forms with a blade that glowed with blue light. He stopped when he saw Jay approach. You should be resting, Tejo said. I should be training, Jay replied. You offered to teach me once. I am accepting that offer. Tejo studied him for a long moment. You almost died. Again. I know. Your enemies will not stop. They will keep coming. I know that too. A slow smile spread across Tejo's face. It was the first time Jay had seen him smile. Very well, human. If you want to learn, I will teach you. But I warn you, I am not a gentle teacher. Jay returned the smile. Good. I do not want gentle. I want strong. They began training that same day. Tejo pushed Jay harder than anyone had ever pushed him. The human fell again and again. His muscles screamed. His wounds ached. But he got up every time, because that was what humans did. They got up. They kept going. They refused to stay down. The queen watched from a distance as Jay trained. She saw the fire in his eyes, the determination in his movements. She saw a creature that should have been broken, but instead grew stronger with every challenge. He is remarkable, she murmured to herself. The shadows would keep plotting. The enemies would keep coming. But Park Jae was no longer the invisible outsider he had once been. He was kin. He was a warrior. He was a survivor. And he was just getting started. 1 year had passed since the night that changed everything. The grand atrium of the Eternal Dawn was filled with light and music once again. The Unity Gala had returned. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy gathered under the crystal chandeliers, just as they had 1 year ago. But tonight was different. Tonight carried a special meaning. Park Jae stood at the edge of the crowd, but he was not invisible anymore. He wore formal Valari robes of deep blue, trimmed with gold. On his chest hung the silver medallion of kin. On his arm was the insignia of Earth, placed there by his own request. He was Valari now, in all the ways that mattered, but he would never forget where he came from. He looked different from the man who had arrived on this ship almost 2 years ago. His body was stronger, hardened by months of training with Captain Tejo. His eyes were calmer, wiser, carrying the weight of everything he had survived. He stood straight and tall, radiating quiet confidence. Princess Nari found him in the crowd. She wore a gown of starlight, white and silver threads that caught every bit of light and threw it back in rainbows. She was more beautiful than the first time he had seen her, more beautiful than he could ever put into words. Are you ready? She asked. No, he admitted, but I will do it anyway. She laughed softly. That is very human of you. I am very human, he replied with a small smile. The music faded. The crowd fell silent. Queen Sumi rose from her throne at the far end of the room. She was dressed in robes of pure white, her silver crown gleaming on her head. She looked eternal, unchanging, a force of nature made flesh. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carrying through the silent room. This gala was interrupted by tragedy. An assassin tried to take my daughter from me. He nearly succeeded. She paused, letting the memory settle over the crowd. But he failed. He failed because of a human, a man named Park J, who had served on this ship for less than a year. A man most of us had never noticed. A man we thought too small, too weak, too fragile to matter. Her ancient eyes swept across the gathered beings. "We were wrong," she gestured, and Jay began walking forward. The crowd parted before him, hundreds of faces watching as he approached the throne. His heart pounded in his chest, his hands wanted to shake, but he kept his steps steady. Park J threw himself in front of a plasma bolt without hesitation, the Queen continued. He took a wound that would have killed any Valari, and then he did something that should have been impossible. He survived. Jay reached the base of the throne and knelt, as tradition demanded. "He survived because humans are not weak," the Queen said. "They are not fragile. They are forged in struggle, tempered by loss, and driven by a fire that we do not fully understand. They live short lives, but they burn brightly. They face death, and they laugh at it. They fall, and they rise again." She descended from her throne, step by step, until she stood before Jay. "Rise, Park J." He rose. "1 year ago, I ordered my people to save your life at any cost. Some questioned my judgment. Some said it was foolish to spend so much on one human." She smiled. "They were wrong. You proved your worth not once, but again and again. You survived poison. You trained until your body was as strong as any warrior. You earned the respect of my captain, my doctor, and my daughter." She turned to face the crowd. "Today, I formally recognize Park J as the first human kin of the Valari Empire. He is family. He is protected. And anyone who threatens him threatens the crown itself." Nari stepped forward, carrying a ceremonial sash of silver and blue. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed it across Jay's shoulders. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to fade away. There was only her. There was only him. "You changed everything," she whispered. The crowd erupted in applause. Nobles who had once ignored Jay now raised their glasses in his honor. Warriors who had thought him beneath notice struck their chests in salute. The sound washed over him like a wave, overwhelming and surreal. Jay stood still, letting it all sink in. He thought about the boy who had grown up alone in Busan, the medic who had saved lives in muddy field hospitals, the nobody who had wandered the corridors of this ship, invisible and ignored. That man was gone. In his place stood something new, something forged by fire and love, and the stubborn refusal to give up. The celebration continued for hours. Jay shook hands with diplomats, accepted congratulations from nobles, and endured the curious stares of beings who had never seen a human up close. Through it all, Nari stayed by his side. Her hand found his whenever he started to feel overwhelmed. Late in the night, when the crowd had thinned and the music had softened, Jay slipped away to the observation deck. He needed a moment alone with the stars. The universe stretched out before him, endless and beautiful. He thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests he had described to Nari so many times. He thought about his mother and wondered if she was watching him somehow, from wherever souls went after they died. "I hope you are proud," he whispered into the darkness. "I tried to be strong, just like you said." The door opened behind him. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. Nari stood beside him, her shoulder brushing against his. "Are you happy?" she asked. He thought about the question carefully. "I am," he said finally. "I never expected this life. I never expected any of this. But yes, I am happy." She rested her head against his shoulder. "You changed everything," she said again. "Not just for me, for the entire empire, for humans everywhere." Jay shook his head. "I just did what any human would do." "No." She looked up at him with those moonlight eyes. "You did what you would do. That is why my mother refuses to let you go. That is why I refuse to let you go." He put his arm around her and pulled her close. "I am not going anywhere," he promised. "Not now. Not ever." They stood together in silence, watching the stars pass by. Behind them, the gala continued. The future stretched out ahead of them, full of unknown challenges and dangers. But Jay was not afraid. He had faced death and won. He had earned a place among the stars. He had found love and purpose, and a family that chose him. Miles away, through the cold void of space, the Queen stood at her window and looked toward Earth, a small blue dot, barely visible among the billions of stars. A world of short-lived, stubborn, impossible creatures. Captain Taiho stood behind her, waiting. "Send a message to Earth," she commanded. "Tell them their species has earned our respect. Tell them they have earned our protection." She turned to face her captain. "If they are all like him, the galaxy should be grateful they choose to be kind. Because if they chose to be otherwise—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Taiho bowed and left to carry out her orders. The Queen turned back to the window. Somewhere on her ship, a human who should have died 100 times was holding her daughter's hand. A human who had proven that the small could be mighty, that the fragile could be unbreakable, that the short-lived could burn brighter than stars. She smiled to herself. Park Jae had come to them as an outsider. He had stayed as family. And somewhere out there, in the endless dark between worlds, humanity's story was just beginning. The stars continued their eternal dance, and the human who would not fall stood among them, finally home.